Well, everyone, I'll just say it straight up. After 3 disappointing patches in a row, we have a really good one. There is a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to break down all the changes and what they mean for competitive and casual play. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to see more competitive content from me, and let's get into the full breakdown. I'll start by briefly covering the Splatfest changes. Basically, the amount of voting percentage and the sneak peek bonus have a bit less of an impact after the update, and tricolor has a bit more of an impact, so winning tricolor is going to feel a lot better. But outside of that, there's not really too many major changes, and it's not really going to be my focus. So let's jump to main weapons. First up, Splattershot Nova. It's going to paint your feet more consistently and move about 10% faster. This is not enough to make the weapon good, but increasing its survivability, since it is a painter, is very important. So that's a good change for it that long term will probably be nice if they buff it more. So Luna Blaster increased the explosion radius that does 70 damage by 50%. So basically, close range indirects are going to do 70 more often. It's going to be a bit more lenient there. So your ability to combo with 30 damage stuff will be a bit easier, which is nice, though I still think Tri heavily outclasses this thing. Big Swig gets a very impactful change with its vertical flick. First off, the damage that will actually one-shot opponents is increased by 15%, which is very important because the horizontal flick is terrible at defending yourself. On top of that though, the distance in which you're going to two-shot people was increased by about 49%. This is basically what Swig really needed. Its painting was already really good, but it was way too helpless, and now its vertical flick is not only not completely defenseless, but at the same time it's great as a mid-range poking tool. The only thing holding back this weapon is its kit at this point, and I think if it gets a different kit or more buffs to the special, it'll definitely be a big threat in zones. Snipe Rider got an extra 8 damage per shot. Why 68 exactly? I don't know. It's still nice, but its abysmal damage to stuff like Crab is what actually needs to be changed, so we'll take this buff and hopefully we get a bit more later. Slasher players, you've been waiting for this one for a long time. The minimum damage of a fall-off shot will now cap at 50, meaning you will no longer be 3-shotting people who are too far lower than you. This change also means that the fall-off damage in general is going to be way higher and more consistent, so if you're trying to combo with things like, say, your angle shooter, it's actually going to be more reliable at doing that. This has kind of been a stupid thing holding Slasher back since it hurts it in the positions it kind of wants to play, so I'm really glad this is adjusted, and I think it's definitely a big thing for this weapon. Mini Splatling is basically getting a bit of MPU in this game, just like Nautilus did, meaning it'll be firing for a bit longer, about 17%. This is just a really nice buff for it. It's going to be getting a lot more special, painting a bit more, and just having a bit of an easier time fighting people, especially when using partial charges. For both the Dapple Dualies and normal Dualies, they'll have their end lag after a dodge roll decreased by around 0.6 seconds. Basically, it's just actions outside of a dodge roll, whether it be swimming or trying to roll again, which is really good. Normal Dualies is actually a decent bit laggy, and while Dapples are fast, them being faster doesn't hurt with how abysmal their kits are. Finally is the Reflux, where the English patch notes are actually wrong. The movement speed is not 10% faster, it's 20% faster, a massive straight speed increase. On top of that, the arrows themselves will be closer together, making it easier to do 90 or a one-shot on opponents with less of a charge. Reflux's main problem outside of its painting range and lack of a good sub-weapon is that the full charges can be a bit unreliable because of how close you need to go to your opponent, and moving way faster will make it much easier for you to get off multiple charges and make it harder for opponents to trade you out. Onto the sub-weapons. Angle Shooter will now have its paint output doubled. If you're getting Deja Vu, it's because they've done this buff before. Its paint radius is going to be massive now, which is really funny, but it'll help its movement, I guess, so especially for Bucket, that's kind of nice. Burst Bomb got a pretty big nerf though. Its ink consumption is being increased from 40 to 45%. This is definitely nice. Burst Spam was a bit too much of a problem. The downside is this affects Splash the least. Stuff like Mini, L3, Stamper, and Carbon are actually hit way more. I don't think it's too big a deal though, especially since the sub-saver curve was buffed, so it'll stack a bit easier. It's basically just going to make Burst Bomb weapons a little bit more gear dependent, which is fine. Yes, it's not going to hurt Splash's Burst Bomb capabilities too much, but even toning that down a little bit is pretty big, because honestly, that's kind of the main thing it does in neutral, since the weapon approaching is very risky with how valuable a special it has. What's actually more important is later down the line, there is a sub-defense nerf, which I'm going to talk about here. Basically, it's going to be more effective against Fizzy Bombs and Burst Bombs, especially if you stack it in lower quantities. In Splatoon 2, one sub-bomb defense was pretty common, mostly because of a lot of interactions with Ink Armor and other special weapons, and in this game it's fallen off. However, now it's going to be really effective at stopping combos from stuff like Stamper and Machine, and just in general be way more effective at reducing its damage, meaning we'll probably be seeing everybody running 1 or 2 subs as sub-resistance, just like we did in Splatoon 2. Basically, across the board, gear dependency has been increased, and the main thing this hurts is Stamper. Stamper. Stamper's burst combos are about 105 damage, and that being decreased means it's going to have to rely on the main weapons combo ability way more. This is way harsher of a nerf than people give it credit for, but I think Sword will be fine. It's already pretty strong, and as we'll get to later down the line, the ability to disrupt Crab is more important, which is an indirect buff for it. It's still overall weaker. Stamper players are going to have a bit more gear dependency and not use Burst Bomb as much, but I think the weapon itself will totally be fine, and is probably in the perfect spot now. While we're on our brief ability detour, Opening Gambit got a pretty significant buff. Not only is it going to now have 3 mains of Intensify action up during its effect, which is pretty nice for blaster players if you're doing solo queue, I guess, but the duration in which the ability will be extended if you get a killer assist has been doubled from 7.5 to 15 seconds. Now don't get me wrong, in competitive play where people are just going to wait out the ability and then you have a main slot gone for the entire thing, it's going to be pretty useless. But if you're playing solo queue, especially with a blaster, it's going to be pretty fun. So at least in that environment, it is now a real ability and not just a complete meme. Alright though, despite this patch being main weapon focused from what they said last time, the specials are absolutely the highlight. Let's start with the most underwhelming one. Ink Vacuum has a 10% wider radius. Cool, that'll be a bit helpful because sometimes it's inconsistent, but the special's still really bad. Tacticooler got 2 changes that are both meant to help reduce its main weakness of people having to clump really close together in order to get all the buffs. You can now throw the special 33% farther, and the horizontal radius in which you can pick up a drink has been doubled. So yes, the buffs themselves aren't anything more powerful, but teams are going to be able to actually get them without going as close together as they used to prior, which I think is actually pretty impactful. It's not going to be a super meta special or anything, but they're on the right track with it. Reef Slider got 3 buffs in this patch. They are definitely trying to make this special good now. It does 70 damage, so it'll combo with stuff like bombs better, though now people are going to be running a sub of sub resistance, so it might not be that good. The explosion radius that one-shots is increased by 17%, and the paint radius from the Reef Slider explosion has been increased by 21%. They still need to do way more with the special, honestly. It's still going to get you killed most of this time, but now it has a little bit of usefulness. It might combo a bit, and it's going to paint areas a bit more easily. Honestly, just give it a few more splashdown traits. Let you super jump in and instantly explode with it, and break sub-weapons. Stuff like that would probably help out a bit. Inkjet got the biggest buffs out of this entire patch. The radius that deals 50 damage has been increased by roughly 43%. Now, to be clear, the actual maximum radius is the exact same. It's just that the 50 damage area is way larger, meaning the 30 damage area is way smaller. On top of that, when you press B, you'll actually be jumping way higher with the Inkjet exhaust, allowing you to reach locations more easily, which is honestly really cool. This should make Inkjet feel way more consistent, and honestly, I'm really hyped for it. I don't know if it's enough for the special, but it's definitely a good start, and I think once we see it on something like a dually or a shooter where it can see more use, we'll definitely see just how good this special is. Ultra Stamp got 4 buffs. First off, the Shockwave explosion, so the thing that does not one-shot, has been increased by 43%, making it way more reliable to kill people with outside hits, and they're not just going to randomly walk through the stamp without taking damage. You'll be able to turn closer in the rush mode, being way more efficient, and during that same rush mode, the stamp will now be translucent on the user's screen, meaning you'll actually be able to see through your own stamp and look at the people you're targeting, which will make it way easier to go for people who are trying to turn out of the way, especially since you now have an increased turning speed yourself. On top of that, the 4th change is a bug where the Ultra Stamp's direct attack would just not be there because of some weird communication delay between that player and the other person's screen. So those random moments where you one-shot someone with the stamp and it just does 0 damage will hopefully not be a thing anymore. Crab Tank is finally getting some nerfs, and they're pretty interesting. First off, there's a delay in which players can attack when returning from mobile mode, ball mode, to attack mode. So basically, if you get shot in your crab and you're forced to ball form and then come out to fight, you have extra delay, making it much easier for that person to keep attacking you or to get away before you can get a kill on them. On top of that, there's been a bug with crab where if you hold down the ZR button after going from ball to normal form, you would actually charge up your rapid fire mode faster than usual. So now this is fixed and it will take the normal amount of time to charge up. These changes combined make it much more reliable to contest the special in its ball form and get away with it instead of just getting instantly one-shot comboed once it switches. There's more though. Once you break the special, there is end lag added. We have no idea how long this is, but I'd assume it's probably around half a second. So the era of congrats, you broke the crab and now the splash throws 2 burst bombs and you die is over. If you break the crab, you'll be able to kill them much more easily. This doesn't really change the special's suppressive power at a distance, and shredding it is still very important, but what they've done is they made the simple act of making it go into ball form be more impactful. impactful, and breaking the special result in an actual death on the crab user rather than them just getting away, which is a very important difference, especially when fighting double crab comps. Now listen, I think double crab is still going to be good, and spoiler alert, splash isn't 210p, which I think they should have done, but I think at this point, double splash is no longer going to be overpowered or super oppressive, and other comps are going to be able to actually fight it effectively. Now that these nerfs are out, I'm really curious to see what teams are going to do with these new options. Finally on the specials though is Kraken, and they're nerfing the objective cheese. It's now much easier to push Kraken off of the tower, and it now will no longer hold clams in Clam Blitz when it goes to the basket. The latter of which wasn't really a problem. The Kraken still had lag before you could throw the ball, so you really wanted your teammates to hold it, but it's still nice for like solo queue, I guess. On top of that, you know how you can squid roll during your Kraken end lag? Turns out that was a bug. You're not supposed to be able to do that, so that's fixed as well, which is another small nerf. And you know how Splash is in 210p for some reason? Yeah, Gal is. I don't hate that. Gals are just running a bunch of charge up, including myself, because you kind of do play it for the special, but like, it's really funny to see Gal here and not Splash again. Oh, and by the way, Kraken is also going to be easier to hear for enemies if you want to count that as a fourth nerf. Outside of that, Carbon is also 190p. Probably just a bit of compensation for the burst bomb nerf, so that's cool. That's a lot of changes. The main thing that got fixed here is the special balance issue. It's still definitely somewhat there. Some specials are a bit too weak and some a bit too good, but the gap has shrunk significantly. Burst spam is toned back, Kraken cheese is gone, crabs are not only nerfed, but nerfed in a way that encourages more counterplay to fight it, and a lot of main weapons got buffed, which is really what's needed, without any getting substantial nerfs, which is honestly good. I really only have two major downsides. One, none of the Brellas got changed. I have a bad feeling they have no idea what to do with this class. Please give it its damage back. And number two, there is not going to be another patch until the next season is out. I was kind of hoping this would be a monthly thing, but nope, the next one's in June. Yeah, honestly, this felt like the first patch where the devs really tried to fix a lot of the core problems instead of just kind of sidestepping and doing small things. And I really hope this is the trend we see for the future. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you all next time.